They say the first sign of madness is forgetting who you are, but the first sign of betrayal is when the people you love start telling you who you've become. The silence in my kitchen used to be peaceful. It used to be the sound of coffee brewing and the morning paper rustling in my hands. Now the silence is heavy, oppressive, like the air in a room where someone has just died but the body hasn't been moved yet. I sat at the granite island, a slab of stone I paid for 3 years ago during the remodel, and stared at the stainless steel refrigerator. I am Arthur Vance. I am 72 years old. I have a PhD in analytical chemistry. I spent 40 years of my life identifying the tiniest impurities in life-saving pharmaceuticals, ensuring that what people put in their bodies wouldn't kill them. And now I am treated like a toddler who cannot be trusted with a spoon. The voice came from my left, my daughter Sarah. She was standing there with that tight, practiced smile she wears these days. It's a mask. I've analyzed it. It involves the muscles of the mouth, but never the eyes. Her eyes are always tired, always darting away, looking at the clock, at her phone, at the sink, anywhere but at me. In her hand, resting on her soft, uncalloused palm, was a single pill. It was small, azure blue, perfectly round. "It's time for your vitamin," she said. Her voice pitched up an octave, that cloying, sickening tone people use for golden retrievers in the senile. "Come on now." The confusion, that's what they call it. For 6 months, the confusion has been the headline of my existence. It started slowly, losing a set of keys, forgetting a name. Then it accelerated into a nightmare. I have lost entire afternoons. I have woken up in rooms I don't remember entering, standing there in my pajamas while Sarah and her husband Mark guide me back to bed with pitying glances. I have found my hands trembling so violently that soup is impossible to eat without a bib. The doctors, the one she selects, the one she drives me to, call it rapid onset dementia. They talk over my head, nodding sympathetically at Sarah as she weeps about the burden of caring for a fading father. But deep down, in the lizard brain of my survival instinct, something has been screaming. It started yesterday. I dropped a coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, sending ceramic shrapnel everywhere. I looked up, expecting anger or pity. Instead, I saw Sarah looking at Mark. It was a micro-expression lasting less than a second. A look of cold, hard calculation. It wasn't the look of a grieving daughter watching her father decline. It was the look of someone checking a watch, wondering why the appointment was taking so long. She nudged my shoulder. "Take it." I looked at the blue pill. I looked at her. "I don't want it," I said. My voice sounded raspy, weak. I hated how weak I sounded. "We talked about this," she sighed, the patience in her voice fraying at the edges. "Dr. Evans said you need this. It helps your brain chemistry. Do you want to have another episode?" The backyard. 2 weeks ago, they found me by the rose bushes crying because I didn't know where the door was. I remember the fear. But I also remember the tea she gave me 20 minutes before I went outside. Today, I made a choice. "Okay," I said. I reached out with a trembling hand. The tremor was real, a side effect of whatever hell I've been living in, and took the pill. I put it in my mouth. It tasted metallic, bitter, wrong. "Here," she said, handing me a glass of water. I took a sip, but I didn't swallow. I slid the bitter little tablet under my tongue, pressing it deep against the sublingual frenulum. It was a trick I learned 50 years ago from a patient back when I volunteered at the VA hospital, a man who refused to take his sedatives because he said the nurses were trying to steal his dreams. I thought he was paranoid then. I know better now. I swallowed the water with a dramatic, noisy gulp. I opened my mouth, lifting my tongue just enough to show the empty space above it, keeping the pill trapped beneath. I gave her a vacant, watery smile, the smile of the idiot she needed me to be. "Good boy, Dad," she said. The humiliation of that phrase nearly made me gag. Good boy. Like I was a dog that had finally learned not to soil the rug. She patted my shoulder, picked up the empty glass, and walked away to the living room to call her husband. He took it, I heard her say into her phone. Yeah, he's down for the count for at least 4 hours. I sat there, frozen in the chair, feeling the chemical bitterness dissolving slightly against the membrane of my mouth. It burned. I looked around the kitchen I had designed, the light hitting the countertops, the pictures of my grandchildren on the fridge, grandchildren who don't visit anymore because Sarah says Grandpa scares them. I felt a profound, aching sorrow that went deeper than the fear. I wonder how many fathers are sitting in kitchens right now, just like this one, trusting the children they raised, assuming that the people they carried on their shoulders would never, ever hurt them. We assume love is a shield. We assume that shared blood means shared loyalty. But as the acid taste spread in my mouth, I realized that for some, love is just a leverage point. If there is anyone out there listening to this, anyone who suspects that the care they are receiving feels more like control, I need you to listen to what happens next. If you believe that honoring your parents is a sacred duty that the world has forgotten, then you need to witness this. Don't look away. I waited 2 minutes, then 3. When I heard the television turn on in the other room, I moved. I rushed to the downstairs bathroom, locking the door silently. I leaned over the sink and spat the blue sludge into a tissue. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be steady. I wrapped the dissolving pill carefully in a piece of aluminum foil I'd hidden in my pocket earlier that morning. Then I waited. The routine usually goes like this. I take the vitamin at 9 a.m. By 10 a.m., the gray fog rolls in. The world loses its sharp edges. Sounds become muffled, like I'm underwater. By noon, I am a vegetable staring at the television, unable to follow the plot of a cartoon, drooling onto my shirt. But today, the clock on the wall ticked. 9:30 a.m., no fog. 9:45 a.m., I looked at my hands. They were still. The tremors, usually violent by now, were barely visible. 10 a.m. came and went. The fog did not arrive. Instead, something else arrived. Me. My thoughts, usually scattered like leaves in a storm, were suddenly razor sharp. I remembered the code to the garage door. I remembered the name of my first chemistry professor. I remembered exactly how much money was in my retirement account before Sarah took over my power of attorney. The clarity was terrifying. It was terrifying because it confirmed the one thing I had been too afraid to articulate. I am not sick. I am being made sick. I checked the mirror. The man staring back at me looked tired, his skin gray and papery, his eyes sunken. But the eyes themselves, they were alert. They were burning with a cold fire I hadn't felt in years. I went back to the living room and feigned a nap in my recliner. I let my mouth hang open. I snored softly. Sarah walked past me twice. She didn't even check to see if I was breathing. She just stepped over my legs like a piece of furniture that had been placed inconveniently. At 11:45 a.m., her phone rang. "I'm leaving now to pick up the twins," she said. "He's out cold. Yeah, the usual dose." The front door closed. The lock clicked. The sound of her SUV pulling out of the driveway faded down the street. I moved. I didn't shuffle. I didn't stumble. I walked with the purpose of a man running for his life. It was filled with boxes of my life, packed away as if I were already dead. I dug to the bottom. My fingers brushed cold metal. My spare car keys. Sarah had taken my main keys months ago. "You're too dangerous on the road, Dad," she had said. I hadn't hit the mailbox. I knew that now. It was gaslighting, pure and simple. I went to the garage. My 1967 Mustang, the car I had restored with my own hands, sat under a tarp. I pulled the cover off, dust motes dancing in the sliver of light from the window. I opened the door and sat in the driver's seat. The smell of old leather and gasoline hit me, a smell of freedom. I put the key in the ignition. I prayed, "Please turn over. Please don't be dead like me." I turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life, a deep, throaty growl that vibrated through the chassis and into my bones. I hit the garage door opener and reversed out before the door was even fully open. I didn't look back at the house. I couldn't. If I looked back, I might burn it down. I drove. The sensation of speed, of control, was intoxicating. I wasn't just driving a car. I was driving my own body again. I headed toward the industrial district, toward the glass and steel building that bore my name. Biovance Solutions. I founded the lab 30 years ago. I sold it 5 years ago when I retired, wanting to spend more time with my wife before she passed. The new owner, Dr. Eris Thorne, was a brilliant young toxicologist I had mentored straight out of grad school. He was a man who owed his career to me, a man of science, a man of truth. I pulled around to the back entrance, parking in the loading bay to avoid the receptionist. I used my old passcode on the keypad, 1952, my birth year. The light turned green. It still worked. I walked down the sterile white hallway, the smell of isopropyl alcohol and ozone filling my lungs. It was the smell of home. I found Eris in the main spectrometry lab. He was hunched over a microscope, adjusting a slide. "Eris," I said. He spun around, nearly knocking over a beaker. His eyes went wide. He took a step back, looking me up and down. I knew what he saw. An old man in wrinkled clothes, hair disheveled, looking like a nursing home escapee. "My God, Arthur, Sarah told me. She said you were incapacitated." I walked up to him. I didn't offer a handshake. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the foil packet. I unwrapped it, revealing the blue, partially dissolved sludge. "Run this," I said. My voice was harsh, clear, commanding. It was the voice of the man who used to sign his paychecks. Eris looked at the pill, then at me. "Arthur, you shouldn't be here." I snapped. The volume of my voice surprised us both. "I am telling you, as your mentor and your friend, to run this sample. Spectrometry, full toxicology screen." Eris hesitated. He looked at the desperation in my eyes, the tremor in my hands that came from rage, not age. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said softly. He took the sample with tweezers and placed it into a solution. I watched him work. The familiarity of the movements, the pipettes, the centrifuge, the hum of the mass spectrometer calmed me. This was science. Science doesn't lie. People lie. Daughters lie. But molecules? Molecules tell the truth. We waited in silence. The machinery hummed, a sound that used to comfort me. Now it sounded like a judge's gavel pounding out a sentence. 30 minutes. That's how long it took to dismantle my life. The printer whirred. Eris walked over and tore the page off. He stood there for a long time, reading the spikes on the graph. I saw his shoulders stiffen. I saw him adjust his glasses, then lean in closer, as if he couldn't believe what the data was telling him. He turned around slowly. His face was pale, drained of blood. He didn't look at me at first. He looked at the paper as if it were burning his hands. "Arthur," he whispered. The fear in his voice made my blood run cold. "My daughter gave it to me," I said, my voice steady. "She told me it was a multivitamin." Eris closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. "This isn't a multivitamin, Arthur. It's a custom compound." He walked over to me, holding the paper out. "It's haloperidol, mixed with a heavy sedative, lorazepam maybe, and a synthesized nervous system depressant. This combination, we usually see this in acute psychiatric wards for aggressive, violent patients." He looked up, and I saw tears in his eyes. In a man of your age, Arthur, this dosage isn't just sedating you, it's shutting down your neural pathways. I gripped the edge of the lab bench. If you stop today, maybe not, Eris said, his voice trembling. But Arthur, look at the concentration. If you keep taking this daily, your heart would stop within 3 months. He stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. This isn't care. This is an execution. I took the paper from his hand. I stared at the chemical breakdown. The jagged lines on the graph looked like a mountain range I had been forced to climb for 6 months without shoes. Haloperidol, sedatives, poison. My daughter, my little girl, the one I held when she scraped her knee, the one I paid tuition for, the one who sat at my table last Thanksgiving and held my hand while she prayed. She wasn't caring for me. She was killing me. She was murdering me by inches, erasing my mind so she could inherit my life before my body was even cold. I opened my mouth to speak, to ask Eris to call the police, to ask for water, to ask why. But the words didn't come. Instead, a sound ripped its way out of my throat. It wasn't a cry. It wasn't a sob. It was a guttural, animalistic scream of pure, undiluted betrayal. It echoed off the cold tile walls, bouncing between the beakers and the machines. The sound of a father's heart breaking into 1,000 irreparable pieces, shattering louder than any coffee mug ever could. They say the most dangerous person in the room is the one who listens when everyone else thinks he's deaf, and the one who watches when everyone else thinks he's blind. The drive back to my own house felt less like a commute and more like a deployment into enemy territory. My hands, usually steady on the wheel of the Mustang, were gripping the leather so tight my knuckles turned the color of old bone. I wasn't confused anymore. The fog that Sarah and her blue pills had engineered inside my skull had lifted, blown away by the cold, hard wind of the toxicology report sitting in my jacket pocket. But as I turned onto Elm Street, seeing the manicured lawns and the familiar mailboxes, a new sensation took root in my gut. It wasn't fear. It was a cold, crystallized rage that settled in my marrow like ice. I parked the car 3 blocks away, behind a row of hedges near the park, just in case she checked the mileage. I walked the last stretch, my legs moving with a strength I hadn't felt in 6 months. But my mind was already rehearsing the role of a lifetime. I slipped through the side gate, the latch clicking softly under my thumb. I crept into the house through the garage, listening to the silence. It was empty. The air smelled of lemon polish and deceit. I replaced the keys in the bottom of the tax return box, burying them under 20 years of financial history. Then I went to the living room. I sat in my recliner, the leather worn smooth by years of reading, and recently months of drug stupor. I turned on the television. I found a channel playing reruns of a cooking show I hated. I let my head loll to the side. I relaxed my jaw until my mouth hung open. I stared at a spot on the wall until my eyes watered and glazed over. And then I waited for the wolf to come home. I didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, the front door opened. I heard the jingle of keys, the heavy thud of a purse hitting the hallway table. "Dad?" Sarah's voice floated in from the foyer. It was bright, cheery, the voice of a woman who believes she has successfully managed a problem. I didn't answer. I let a line of saliva pool at the corner of my mouth. It was the most humiliating thing I have ever done, surrendering my dignity to sell the lie. But I knew that if she saw even a flicker of intelligence in my eyes, I would be dead within the week. She walked into the living room. I felt her presence before I saw her. She stood over me, her shadow falling across my face. "Did you have a nice nap, Dad?" she asked. I blinked slowly, turning my head with a jerky, uncoordinated motion. I looked at her, then looked past her, focusing on the harmless pattern of the wallpaper. "Bluebirds," I mumbled, slurring the words intentionally. "Mother said, bluebirds are coming." Sarah sighed. It wasn't a sigh of concern or sadness. It was the sound of a mechanic listening to an engine that is finally running exactly as tuned. It was a sigh of relief. "That's nice, Dad," she said, patting my shoulder with a touch that felt like burning ice. "Mom's been gone a long time, remember? But you rest. I'm going to make some tea." She walked away. She believed the drug was working. She believed the father who taught her to ride a bike, who paid for her wedding, who held her when she cried over teenage heartbreaks, was gone. She believed she was alone in the house with a ghost. But the ghost was watching. I spent the rest of the afternoon staring at the television, and during her patronizing comments, eating the soft food she prepared because she claimed I couldn't chew properly. Every bite tasted like ash. Every time she checked her phone and smiled, I wondered who she was texting. Was it her husband, her lawyer, or was she checking the balance of the accounts she thought I didn't know about? Night fell. The house grew quiet. I waited until the clock on the bedside table read 2 a.m. I listened for the rhythm of her breathing from the guest room down the hall. She stayed over on Tuesdays to monitor me. Once I was certain she was asleep, I pulled the burner phone from the hollowed-out book on my shelf. I had bought it at a gas station months ago in a moment of paranoia that turned out to be prophecy. I dialed a number I hadn't used in a decade. My thumb hovered over the call button. I was about to drag another soul into this hell, but I had no choice. "Elias," I whispered into the dark. "Elias Vance is not my brother by blood, but we bled together in the mud of the Mekong Delta 50 years ago. He went on to become a forensic accountant for the FBI, a man who tracks money like a bloodhound tracks a scent. He retired angry, bored, and cynical. He is the only person on earth I trust." The phone rang 4 times. Then a click. "Yeah?" His voice was gravel and smoke, rougher than I remembered. "It's Arthur," I said. Silence. Then the rustle of bed sheets. "Arthur? Sarah told me you were in a home. She called me 3 months ago, said you didn't know your own name, said you were forgetting to eat." "She lied," I said. My voice was steady, stripped of the slur, stripped of the weakness. It was steel. I heard the change in his breathing. He sat up. I could picture him in his small apartment in Chicago, reaching for his glasses, his mind already shifting from sleep to alert. "Talk to me, Artie," he said. "I need you, Elias. She's poisoning me. I have the lab results. Haloperidol, sedatives. She's melting my brain, Elias, but I need to know why." Most men would ask if I was sure. Most men would tell me to call the police. Most men would offer empty platitudes about family and misunderstandings. Elias is not most men. He went silent, the silence of a predator locking on to a target. "Send me the address," he said. "I'll be there tomorrow." 2 p.m., I whispered. "She goes to yoga. Leave the back door unlocked." "Done." He hung up. No goodbyes, no wasted words, just the promise of violence wrapped in loyalty. The next day, the performance continued. I shuffled, I mumbled, I let Sarah wipe oatmeal off my chin. At 1:45 p.m., she left for her class, telling me to stay in the chair. "Be good, Dad," she said. The moment the door latched, I was up. I unlocked the back sliding door and waited in the kitchen. At 2 p.m. exactly, the door slid open. Elias slipped into the house like a shadow. He is 74 now, lean as a whip, his face a road map of hard living. His eyes, sharp as broken glass, swept the room before locking on to me. He looked at the weight I'd lost, the bruises on my spirit, the tremor I couldn't quite suppress. His jaw tightened until I thought his teeth might crack. He didn't hug me. We aren't that kind of men. He just nodded. "You look like hell, Artie," he said. "I feel like it," I replied. I handed him the lab report from Eris. He put on his reading glasses and scanned the document. He read it once, then twice. He folded it carefully and put it in his breast pocket, right over his heart. "This is attempted murder, Artie," he said quietly. This isn't just abuse.
This is active elimination. We go to the police now. We give them this paper. No, I said, not yet. Why the hell not? If I go to the police, she claims I'm senile, I explained, pouring him a cup of black coffee with shaking hands. She claims I mixed up my meds. She has power of attorney over my medical decisions. She spent 6 months building a narrative with every doctor in Seattle that I am rapidly declining. She'll have me committed to a psych ward before the ink dries on the police report. And in there, Elias, in there, they'll give me the drugs legally. I won't survive a week. Elias stared at me. He knew I was right. He knew how the system worked. I need to know the end game, I continued. Why now? Why this way? I've been generous. I've given her everything. Why does she need to erase me? Elias nodded. He pulled a slim laptop from his satchel and cracked his knuckles. Then, let's follow the money, he said. We went to my study. I sat by the window, keeping watch through the blinds, while Elias worked. I gave him the passwords I remembered with my newfound clarity. Passwords Sarah thought were lost in the fog of my dementia. Flashbacks assaulted me as I watched him type. I saw Sarah at 10, crying over a broken doll, looking up at me to fix it. Daddy, make it better. I saw Sarah at 20, asking for money for a car because she wanted to be safe. Daddy, I need help. I saw Sarah at 30, asking for a down payment on a house. Daddy, it's for my future. I gave it all. I gave everything. I never said no. Was that my sin? Was my generosity the soil in which this greed grew? Artie, Elias said. His voice was cold. It sent a shiver down my spine. Come look at this. I walked to the desk. The screen was filled with spreadsheets and bank logs. My retirement fund, the one I built over 40 years of analyzing chemical compounds, the nest egg that was supposed to last me until I was 100, was drained. The balance read 0. But that wasn't the twist. She didn't spend it, Elias said, pointing to the transfer logs. She didn't buy a boat or a vacation home. Look, the money had been moved in a series of rapid transfers. First to a joint account I didn't know existed, then to a holding company, and finally to an offshore shell company in the Caymans. It's hiding, Elias said. She's not spending it, she's stashing it. She's liquidating you, Artie. She's stripping the copper out of the walls before she demos the building. And there's more, he said. He opened a document he found in a hidden subfolder on Sarah's cloud drive, which was linked to my home network. It was a PDF, a draft, Last Will and Testament of Arthur Vance, revised. I read the date. It was created 3 days ago. It leaves everything to Sarah, I whispered, reading the text. It cuts out the charity for veterans I've supported for decades. It cuts out her cousins. It leaves every single asset, tangible and intangible, to Sarah Vance Miller.
But the kicker, the thing that made my knees buckled, was the document underneath it. DNR order. Do not resuscitate. It was signed, but it wasn't my signature. It was a forgery, a good one, traced from old checks. She's not just stealing from you, Arthur, Elias said, looking at me with eyes full of ancient, weary sorrow. She's planning the exit strategy. She's going to stage an accident or a medical crisis. Maybe you fall down the stairs. Maybe you take too many of those blue pills. And when the paramedics come, she's going to wave this paper in their faces. I stared at the screen. The DNR order blurred in my vision. This drug, the haloperidol. It's just the prep work, Elias murmured. It's to make you compliant enough to sign the will, or weak enough to die without a fight. I looked at the papers. I looked at the signature that was supposed to be mine. The grief finally burned away. The sorrow of the father who loved his little girl evaporated like mist in a furnace. What was left was something harder, something colder. I am not a father anymore. I am a target, and the wolf is coming through the front door. Just then I heard it, the distinct sound of a car door slamming in the driveway. "She's home," I hissed. "She's early." Elias moved with a speed that belied his age. He snapped the laptop shut. He grabbed his satchel. "Showtime, Artie," he whispered, gripping my shoulder hard. "Play the fool. We catch her when she hands you the pen. We don't just survive this. We bury her." He slipped out the back door just as the key turned in the front lock. I rushed back to the recliner. I sat down. I slumped my shoulders. I let my jaw go slack. I stared at the blank television screen. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but my face was a mask of emptiness. "Dad," Sarah called out, "I'm back." She walked into the room. She was holding a folder. I recognized it. It was the same folder I had just seen on the screen. "I have some papers for you to look at, Dad," she said, her voice sweet, dripping with poison. "Just some boring tax stuff. I need you to practice your signature." I looked at her. I looked at the pen in her hand. I slumped deeper into the chair, let a line of drool escape my lip, and waited for my daughter to come kill me. The trap was set, but she didn't know who was caught in it.